start.
Hello everybody, welcome to the morning geometry class, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on geometric aspects of Chinatown, 1974, and their significance. Good morning, my name is Diego Ponce, and welcome to my presentation. Now, an important note before we continue that I feel is kind of important to mention, we're going to be discussing Chinatown, which is a 1974 film directed by Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski is a rapist, and there's no getting around that fact. So if you feel uncomfortable discussing his works because of what he's done and all the things that have been in the news about him, then feel free to leave. But I think that separating an artist from their art and discussing what's important about that art and what to know, what's significant about it, is if the art is significant enough, then it's fine to discuss it. But if you feel uncomfortable discussing Roman Polanski and stuff about him, then yeah. But let's continue. Anyway, what is Chinatown? Well, Chinatown is a 1974 American neo-noir mystery film directed by Roman Polanski and released by Paramount Pictures. It stars Jack Nicholson as J.J. Gittes, my favorite actor by the way, and Faye Dunaway as Evelyn Mulray. But as a quick summary of the film, Gittes is a private investigator hired by Evelyn Mulray to see if her husband, chief engineer of the LA Water Department, is having an affair, and he does some less than legal stuff to figure out if Mulray has a mistress, but he finds out he does and publishes the findings in the local paper. And surprise, it wasn't his wife that hired him, it was actually some actress, and now Hollis Mulray is dead. So the movie starts. But this isn't a movie review, so let's get into it, shall we? And I'm going to say some things here that aren't going to be super to be taken super literally. If I say there are a lot of rectangles on the screen, I don't literally mean there are glowing neon rectangles on the screen, but you can infer based on stuff that I'm going to say. So yeah, first thing to talk about is design with significance. And whenever you're creating a character, and I'm sure you notice in Disney animated movies and stuff like that, when creating a character, a lot of simple shapes are used to really describe what the character is, and we're gonna see that here. Now, I'm sure a couple of you recognize these characters because they're from a popular game called Overwatch. Now, the thing to notice about these characters is that they're created by a fan. These interpretations of them are created by a fan artist, and as you can see in the middle one, it's made using a triangle and a square. The one on the left, is made using just a simple triangle, and the one on the right is made using just a box. And there is a reason for this, because on this fan artist's blog, they publish a little, blurb about what led them to create this kind of artwork. And the fan artist says that there are three main shapes they use in their toolbox: round shapes, box shapes, and triangle shapes. And each shape corresponds to some aspect of the character that they want to represent. So, as we can see here, box means reliable, uniform, and traditional, and the one on the right is reliable, uniform, and traditional. It represents something, it correlates to what their personality is, pretty simple stuff. But this is just some dumb fan artist, right? You're right, this is just some dumb fan art for a really stupid game that no one should care about. But yeah, but what you might care about is Shutterstock. Shutterstock is a company that's known for making stock photos of just general things that companies can use. Stock photos, this meme, that meme, you've seen them. You've seen these memes. But, yeah. On their website, they publish a little guide on what's most effective to use in your advertising goals, because you can pay Shutterstock to just get some stock photos or whatever. And what they say is that rectangles are usually the standard default shape for many contexts. To make something stand out visually, try using circles in your design since they're not used as often and will create visual interest. And that's an important thing to note. We're going to be discussing circles first. So anyway, take this scene from Chinatown, which happens relatively early on in the film. If I can get this to play, first try, nice. Ooh, can we get some audio here now? Let's see here. Oh, do you know how to play audio on this?
There's a jack you can plug into your
I
audio.
plug in the jack. Love technology. Dude.
Right.
There we are.
You lost the video.
Did I?
Oh,
no.
it's back.
There we are. Aha. Nothing super interesting happens. Just look at the cinematography, because it's not like an action part of the movie. But yeah, this frame in particular, let's see here. There we are. Yeah. So as you can see in this frame, there's a giant circle in the middle, so that's important. And the reason that this is important is because this piece of evidence, and I'm going to spoil the movie a little bit, so if you want to, watch Chinatown, which is a really good film, by the way, it's really good. It's with Jack Nicholson, so I'm biased. But I'm going to spoil a little bit. In this scene, Hollis Mulleray, seen here, before he dies, is going down to the beach to investigate some water that's coming out that's like being redirected towards the ocean, even though they're supposed to be in a drought. So he finds that kind of suspicious as chief water engineer. So he goes down to the beach to check it out. However, in this part of the movie, Jack Nicholson or J.J. Gittes doesn't know that this is a thing that's happening. Right now, he's on another mystery that doesn't happen until later, and this piece of evidence doesn't become super relevant until later in the film. So even though this isn't like super important to Jack right now, it's important to us as the audience, simply because there's a giant circle in the middle, and you can see that between the framing, it's a frame within the frame. So, yeah. This isn't the only instance of where a circle represents some piece of evidence that's used later in the film, as we'll see in this next clip. Oh wait, hold on. Ooh, spoil. Let's see here. Anyway. A little bit of less than legal stuff going on here. Alright, this is the next instance of where we see this circle. Is this clear enough? Can people see it? Alright, I can't see it. Yeah. So this is the next instance of where a circle in the middle of the frame is used to represent something that's going to be important later on in the film. Because right now this is supposed to be evidence that they're having an affair, but as we find out later, they're not actually having an affair. So this piece of evidence becomes relevant later in the film. That's dictated by how the circle is right here. And an interesting thing to note here is that there's multiple frames within the frame. So there's obviously the actual movie frame and stuff, but there's also the camera, which also forms a rectangular shape, and his body kind of forms a rectangular shape. So it's just concentric inner frames between the frames, and that's kind of interesting. I like that. So that leads us into our next topic: rectangles or squares, but they both represent structure and stability. So on a article published by V. Renee on nofilmschool.com, she says that squares can be seen as almost the antithesis of the circle, and that it can often represent that which is unnatural or man-made. Squares also represent stasis, stability, strength, or things that might be considered boring or old-fashioned. And one of the key things I want to focus on in this definition is stability. A lot of what J.J. Gittes does is pretty illegal throughout the movie, and we're going to see that. We're not going to see it here, but it's going to lead into it.
A little lost. I wonder if you could tell me where the flat books for the Northwest Valley are?
Part of it's in Ventura County. We don't have Ventura County in our home records.
Well, then I'll settle for Los Angeles County.
Row 23, Section C.
So this is a pretty iconic frame of the movie, and the reason it's iconic is because J.J. Gittes doesn't like using the law, because he has this thing against the government that it goes into the movie. But yeah, right here, as you can see, he's surrounded by a lot of books and bookshelves and windows with square little frames and stuff. And I know this seems kind of reaching a little bit, but this is pretty intentional. A lot of the books are obviously rectangles, but there's also rectangles on the back where there's the window frame, and then he's surrounded by bookcases and stuff. And this is a representation of how trapped he is in this law-abiding world where he doesn't want to follow every single rule. And it's really neat to see this because this is an official Hall of Records office. This is run by the government. It's you can see that the guy who's working there clearly doesn't want to be there. But yeah, these rectangles represent his frustration with this entire structure and stuff, and is him going against the stability and stuff like that. And I found that really interesting. And I think this was yeah, this is what I found. Thank you. Questions, comments, complaints? Anyone?
So just out of curiosity, were there any other shapes that were like that you found like interesting that could possibly like bring like show significance within the movie, like were there
Kind
any,
of.
like,
So
rectangles or
I was,
triangles, I mean?
yeah, triangles was a big one. I noticed that in a lot of like the bigger reveals of the movie, there were a lot of like strange angles and stuff, and a lot of these could be like considered triangles. Like when in a couple reveals, like in one certain, there's a sex scene in this movie, and in one certain like frame of it, there is a lot of like angular, weird body parts that like, or not like weird body parts, but like weird like contortions of the body that like show a lot of acute angles. So I feel like triangles could be used to represent it, but I didn't find enough like specific instances of it for it to be relevant to the presentation. Yeah.
What made you want to present about this topic?
Animation was taken. Also, I really like Jack Nicholson. He's a cool actor. Yeah.
Did you choose this movie just because of Jack Nicholson, or like was it
Um,
like one of your favorite Jack Nicholson movies?
Not really. I mean, back in high school, I took a film class, and like, he didn't really like present any Jack Nicholson movies. He just presented a lot of like older movies, so like It's a Wonderful Life, Rear Window, and stuff like that. And I'd never really done an analysis on a Jack Nicholson movie. And even though he's my favorite actor, I've never like taken the time to see what parts of his films are, you know, the best. So I want to do that for now.
Did what you find like change how you viewed the movie?
Definitely. Probably because on my first watch through, I was really tired, and like I wanted to watch it just to like hear his angry voice in my head. But yeah, I mean, like I have a new appreciation for it just because like Chinatown was never one of my favorite movies, mostly because I didn't pay attention to it too much. And now that I see a lot of the symbolism and that I actually like paid attention to the story, it's pretty good.